What if I told you that your child is not aggressive because of their inability to communicate? What if I told you that their inability to communicate was actually part of potentially an underlying health condition that we could have better outcomes with? I work with hundreds of families, and when we're dealing with aggression or when I'm seeing aggression in an autism household, it is rarely because of the inability to communicate, but usually because of one of these three factors that I'm going to share in a minute. What I often do see, though, is families of children on the spectrum start with a aggressive 3-year-old, roughly in a young age, maybe even 2, where biting, hitting, and kicking is tolerated, and these underlying health conditions are not addressed. And what ends up happening is, as this child grows, they become stronger, and they become bigger, and they become more aggressive. What we see often is these are the families that often end up feeling very, very fearful of their children, feeling like they are completely segregated from the world due to not being in schools anymore, not being part of society as much anymore due to aggression and outings. And so these are the children who are often institutionalized. And I want that to have a completely different outcome if this is you. So first, hello, my name is Natalie Pelto, and I am a co-founder and owner of Blue Life RX, a wellness initiative, and also a company that focuses on bringing lifestyle medicine to adults and children alike, and so they can thrive. And so my expertise is focused on child brain development, specifically for autism and ADHD. And our mission is to see and normalize our kids on the spectrum becoming verbal, independent, and thriving and living the life of their dreams filled with joy. So make sure to like and subscribe below, just so that you can get access to our free weekly content that comes out. It's absolutely worth it. Okay, I want to tell you guys a story. I want to dive in here. I want to tell you guys a story. We had someone who joined, and this is a very common story, but I'm going to share, just what I see as being, one of the more recurrent conversations I have with families. So we had a girl who joined the program, or I shouldn't say a girl, we had a family with a young girl who joined the program. Now, this girl was around between the ages of 7 and 8, and she came in with as a top priority when we asked her their goals, top priority was behaviors and aggression. And my first question, and this is always how we start in the program, is to kind of dive deeper into data. And so my question for her was, what is your child doing right now? Like, what is your why? What do you think the why is behind the aggression? And the family stated that whenever she was told a no, there would be a huge meltdown. And holes would be knocked into the walls. These meltdowns were not like a 15-minute tantrum. It would be like an hour of complete destruction. And this family was fearful. This family was having severe PTSD and trauma from living in this state in the day-to-day. And the only avenue that they had been offered was therapy. So the first thing that I asked after, I said, well, I like to dive into a little bit of a different area. And so I asked them about the top 3 things, health related, that I see linked to aggression. And the first one was, I asked about diet. Do they eat 35 to 50 plants per week? Are they picky eaters? Do they eat and consume ultra processed foods? Do they have a higher toxicity load? Do they know what a toxin is? And so I dive into this because both nutritional deficiencies and toxicity overburden, right, that we have just by living in today's world, often will create what we call systemic inflammation. So our body gets inflamed. And so then what it does is it creates pressure on the liver, on the organs, on the brain, and it creates brain inflammation. And the last area that I asked, and of course, which will go down and talk about gut inflammation. I'm sure if you're here, you may have heard about the gut-brain axis, or you've heard about the gut health as being the root cause for autism, when actually that is just another part of our system. Systemic inflammation doesn't just come from the gut, although yes, our microbiome is extremely important. We have to understand that something is happening to the gut microbiome for it to be depleted, to be hurt, to be not working properly. And that is the root cause. The root causes are nutritional gaps and often over toxicity. And that is actually, to me, the root causes of what we see in our program. And so the last thing, though, that I ask that a lot of people always find surprising is the fight or flight response. Do you understand co-regulation? Do you know what it means to be in fight or flight? Does your child recover from stress very well? Do they have high resilience, or is that threshold much lower? So now, below, I'm going to give 3 tips that I gave this family that you can use for your family right now today to change this outcome. So the first tip is to fill the nutrition gaps. Now, in the Blue Life Autism program, we do focus on bio-individual needs, which we do in a nutritional therapy assessment style. And if you want to learn more about that, make sure to check out the comments below in the description. But for now, and a way that you can do that at home right now, and at least to get this ball rolling, we'll say, is that we can start by introducing a diversity of plants, working up to 35 to 50 plants per week. Might seem like a lot, not as hard as you think it is to do. And if your child doesn't eat plants at all, then you know exactly where you need to be working on the hardest, because usually success leaves clues. And I can tell you that if you have a child who has literally only 3 foods, 4 foods, 5 foods even, or even a diversity of multiple foods that are all ultra processed or that are not in the plant family, you have probably found your #1 cause for aggression. Now, saying that, okay, here are some specifics. A lot of people ask me, well, what are the foods? So #1, diversity is the most important thing. Focusing on plants that are high in omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, magnesium, and iron are generally very supportive to the and iron are to aggression specifically. We know, I'm not a big fan of supplements, so I don't recommend supplementation, because most people are like, well, can I just supplement those? No, because you're not addressing the full body systemic inflammation at that point. You are taking, we're not reducing the inflammation if we're not using the whole plant. So a supplement is basically a copied portion of a plant. And so we want to have the whole plant to use all of the benefits, from the fibers to the nutrients to the detoxification agents. So I hope that makes sense. #2, we want to remove toxins from our home as a starting point. So learn about toxins. It's not hard. Like, if we have products that we can't pronounce in our beauty products, in our food products, in our other products, like basically ingesting, inhaling, and ingesting, inhaling, and on our skin, absorbing, are the 3 ways that toxicity enters our body. So looking at our skincare products, our cleaning products, and our food is usually a great place to start the process of stopping the toxic exposures. Next, what we want to do is we want to change our foods, focus on removing the ultra processed foods as a toxin. It seems like a no-brainer, and I do understand that, but the truth is that our grocery stores are 90% processed. It is much harder these days than it was in the 1970s, for example, where the store was flipped around and it was 90% whole foods, to choose those foods. Whereas when you have such a overburdened grocery store with harmful substances, it's really like a poison store these days. And I know I'm saying that and I shouldn't. I know I'm saying that, but it is true that our grocery stores are anywhere between 80-84% toxic material and ultra processed foods with ingredients that we cannot even pronounce, many of these causing cancer and many other things. So the focus is to, as I divert from my original plan of what I was going to talk to, is to focusing on removing these ultra processed foods, not to mention the thousands of scientists in labs that are creating these foods that our kids crave all day because they are so addictive. And remember that our food industry is looking to make people hungrier and to eat more, not to necessarily give us the most healing foods there is, especially companies. Farmers have a completely different idea of this. #3, okay, as I diverted too long on that one, explore your own nervous system. So our children learn to co-regulate from us as parents. And I understand if you are in fight or flight because you're literally living in PTSD every day, they will match it every time, which means that you actually have to learn to become the calm in the storm. And in order to do that, it's important to get external help often, but to learn what regulation of our nervous system means. And it's so simple. It could be as easy as doing a 4-part breath count before doing a transition or going into an interaction where you're removing something, like saying no. I would change the vocabulary to not right now or maybe later, but ideally it's not just about changing the words, it's about how you're presenting the offer. As I like to tell people, what you're trying to do when you're helping your child transition from task to task is you need to sell them on the other offer, and how you do that and how you feel as you're doing that is going to make a difference. If they feel that coloring a picture with you is the better offer because you look like you're going to have such a good time, then maybe it won't be as bad transitioning off that screen that you want them off of so bad. Just an example, but it is important to understand that it is a vicious cycle when it comes to us being in a trauma fight or flight, and it does take some legwork. So what I like to suggest for families is to focus on the lowest hanging fruit, which means take one of the 3 tips that I gave you today, the one that seems the most achievable, and begin to implement that one in your family, and you will see some better outcomes. Now, we help you easily implement these types of things in the Blue Life Autism program and build these habits much easier in a community of people who have already done so and are extremely successful. And so if you're interested in learning about that, just go ahead and click the link below. I have a webinar that is completely education-based. It's 2 hours long on exactly how the program works and also the framework for it. So you can even take that information. It's completely educational. I talk about the program at the end, but it is very, very high quality information. So you want to make sure that you watch that. We will talk to you soon. Make sure to like and subscribe.